Before anything else, let your shoulders down an inch. You don't have to start anything in the next few minutes. You don't have to be productive while you listen to this. That's almost funny given the subject, but I mean it. This is a video you can have on in the background while you do the dishes. And if all you take from it is one slightly kinder thought about yourself, that's a good outcome. So just settle in. There's no task here. There's only a quiet look at why a certain kind of task feels the way it does. Because I think you know this exact feeling. There's the thing you need to do. It isn't even big, a short email, one form, the first sentence of something. And you have the time, you have the afternoon, and yet you cannot make yourself begin. You open the laptop and then open something else. You walk past the folder for the 9th day in a row. You tell yourself, in a minute, after this, once I've eaten, and the minutes quietly become a week. And every time you don't start, a small interest payment comes due in a feeling, a little weight. And underneath it, that old familiar sentence, the one you've said about yourself so many times it stopped feeling like an opinion and started feeling like a fact. I'm just lazy. I have no willpower. So let me say the thing I most want you to hear right at the top, before any explaining. You are not lazy. A lazy person doesn't care. A lazy person feels nothing about the undone thing and sleeps fine. That is not you. You care so much it hurts, and the hurting is the whole problem. What looks like laziness from the outside is almost always the opposite on the inside. It's not that you don't want to do the task. It's that you can't bear how the task makes you feel. And once you can see that clearly, the word lazy just falls off you, because it was never describing what was actually happening. You know the moment I mean. You go to begin and something in you flinches. Not a thought exactly, more like a flinch, a quiet not yet. And so you reach for the small comfort instead. The phone, the fridge, one more tab. And here is the part nobody tells you. For about 90 seconds, you feel better. The weight lifts. That relief is real, and it is the most important clue in this entire video. Because you don't reach for relief unless something hurt first. You weren't avoiding the work, you were avoiding a feeling. Let's go find out what it is. Here's what the science actually says, in plain language. For a long time, we treated procrastination as a time management problem, as if you just needed a better calendar. The research moved on. Two psychologists, Fuchsia Sirois and Tim Pickle, reframed it completely. They describe procrastination as a mood repair strategy. When a task brings up a bad feeling, dread, boredom, self-doubt, the fear of doing it badly, your mind reaches for the fastest way to feel better. And the fastest way to feel better is to not do the task right now. So you delay, the bad feeling lifts, and you get a small hit of relief. Procrastination, in their words, is the prioritizing of short-term mood over the long-term goal. There is a striking experiment behind this from Diane Tice, Ellen Bratslawski, and Roy Baumeister. They put people in a mildly bad mood and found that the bad mood alone made them more likely to give in to immediate temptation and put off what mattered. They titled the idea almost too perfectly. If you feel bad, do it. When we're distressed, repairing the feeling jumps the queue ahead of every other goal. So the task was never really the obstacle. The feeling about the task was. Think of it like this. The task is a stepping stone. Small, solid, completely manageable. But sitting on top of it is a puddle of feeling. And from where you're standing, the puddle looks like deep, cold water. So you stop at the edge. Not because the stone is hard to step on, but because you don't want to get wet. That's the whole trap. You think you're frozen by the task, this enormous thing you can't face. You're actually frozen by the weather sitting on top of it. And weather, unlike a flaw in your character, is something we can work with. You don't need to become a braver person. You just need to see that the water is 2 inches deep. I'll tell you how I learned this, because I didn't read it first. I lived the wrong version for years. There was a piece of writing I owed someone, and it was 3 paragraphs long. 3. And I did not start it for 11 days. I am not exaggerating. I cleaned my whole apartment to avoid 3 paragraphs. And the story I told myself the entire time was that I was lazy and undisciplined and probably a fraud. What I could not see from inside it was that the 3 paragraphs were easy. What was hard was the feeling I'd bolted onto them, which was that they had to be perfect, and if they weren't, that would mean something about me. I wasn't avoiding the writing. I was avoiding the verdict I'd attached to the writing. The day I finally sat down, the actual task took 19 minutes. The dread had lasted 11 days. That gap between 19 minutes and 11 days is the whole subject of this video. So let's name the bad model gently, because it isn't a villain, it's just a misunderstanding we all inherited. The standard advice for procrastination treats it as a willpower shortage. Just do it, stop making excuses, push through. And notice what that advice does. It aims all its force at the task and completely ignores the feeling. It's like shouting at someone to wade into water they're afraid is freezing, while never once checking the temperature. And when you can't make yourself do it, the same advice has a second move ready, and it's the cruel one. It tells you the reason you couldn't is that you're weak. So now you've got the original dread, plus a fresh layer of shame on top of it. And shame, it turns out, is not a fuel. We'll see in a moment that it's the opposite. The grind harder model doesn't just miss the problem, it quietly makes the puddle deeper. So here is the big reframe, the one idea this whole video turns on. You have fused two things that are actually separate. There is the task and there is the feeling about the task, and you've been treating them as one solid object. They are not. The task is almost always smaller and more doable than it looks. The feeling about it, the dread, the standard, the not knowing where to start, is the part with all the weight. And the moment you separate them, something loosens. Because you stop trying to summon the courage to face a deep, cold lake and start dealing with the only real thing in front of you, which is a manageable little stone and some weather you can wait out or walk around. The hustle model says, attack the task harder. The gentler truth says, lower the temperature of the feeling and the task quietly does itself. We're going to spend the rest of our time on how you actually do that. And the governing principle falls right out of it. There's a well-studied quirk of the mind called present bias, sometimes described through temporal discounting. It means we wildly overvalue how we feel right now compared to any reward sitting in the future. The relief of not starting is available this second. The satisfaction of having finished is hours or days away, so your mind quietly marks it down to almost nothing. A real-world study found that the steeper someone discounts future rewards, the more they procrastinate. So the deck is genuinely stacked. Right now, relief beats later satisfaction almost every time, by design, which gives us the contrast that changes everything. The grind model tries to make the future feel more urgent. The gentler model makes the present feel less heavy. You're never going to outshout present bias by caring harder about the deadline, but you can shrink the feeling that's making now unbearable until starting costs almost nothing. One of those is a fight you keep losing. The other is a door you can simply open. Let me make that concrete, because it sounds abstract until you see it. Picture an email you've been avoiding for a week, a slightly hard one. Maybe you let someone down or you owe a difficult answer. Now, the task is 60 seconds of typing. That's it. But look at what's sitting on top of it. The fear they'll be angry. The story that you're a flake. The worry you'll word it wrong. That's the puddle, and it's why a 60-second email can cost you 7 days. Now watch what happens when you separate the two. You don't try to force yourself to answer the whole thing, courage and all. You just open it and read it. No reply required. That's the whole move. Almost always, the feeling deflates the instant you look, because the dread was bigger than the contents. The monster under the bed shrinks when the light goes on. And once the feeling drops 2 inches, the 60-second task is just a 60-second task. You didn't get more disciplined. You drained the puddle and then the stone was easy. So how do you actually lower the temperature instead of pushing through? You shrink the starting point until the feeling can't fit on it. This is grounded in the same emotion regulation research. The dread attaches to the size and the stakes of a task. A whole report carries a heavy feeling. The single sentence, open the document and type the date, carries almost none. So you don't ask, how do I make myself do the project? You ask, what is the smallest first move, so small that the feeling has nothing to grab onto? Open the file. Lay out the one form. Read the email without answering. Write one ugly sentence you fully intend to delete. None of these require courage because none of them are big enough to be scary. And here's the quiet magic. Starting is almost the entire battle. Once the document is open and there's one bad sentence on the screen, the dread has already broken because the thing you feared beginning is now behind you. You're no longer at the edge of the water. You're standing on the stone, a little surprised it was so shallow. And if you take one tactic from this whole video, take this one. I call it the first 2 minutes, and it's the single move that turns dread into doing. The rule is simple. You are not allowed to think about finishing the task. You are only allowed to do the first 2 minutes of it, badly, and then you have full permission to stop. That's the real promise, and you have to mean it. Answer the emails becomes, open the inbox and read the top one. Write the report becomes, open the file and type one sentence. Do my taxes becomes, put the folder on the desk, that's all. People resist this because it feels too small to matter. Trust the small. The point isn't the 2 minutes of work. The point is that 2 minutes is too brief for the dread to mount its defense. You can pair it with what psychologists call an implementation intention, a plain if-then plan. A meta-analysis of 94 studies by Goldwitzer and Sheeran found that deciding the exact moment and the exact first move in advance produces a large, reliable jump in follow-through. So you decided now, in calm. After I pour my morning coffee, I open the document and type one line. You're not promising to finish. You're just promising to step onto the stone. The walk across tends to take care of itself. So picture who you become when the task and the feeling are no longer fused. You sit down to the hard email and you simply open it. Because opening isn't scary, and opening is all you asked of yourself. The dread still shows up sometimes, but you recognize it now. Oh, that's just the weather, not the work. And you let it be there while you do the first small thing anyway. You stop spending 11 days on 19 minutes. And here is the part the hustle culture gets exactly backwards, and the research is clear on it. The way back into a stalled task is not more self-criticism, it's less. Fuchsia Sirois found across 4 studies that people higher in self-compassion procrastinate less, because self-compassion lets you face the undone thing without drowning in shame about it. And there's a beautiful study by Wall, Pickle, and Bennett where students who simply forgave themselves for procrastinating before one exam went on to procrastinate less before the next one. Read that twice. Forgiveness didn't make them lazier. It made them start sooner because it cleared away the shame that was making the task feel unbearable in the first place. Being kind to yourself isn't what makes you avoid the work. It's the thing that lets you walk back to it. So here's your one small thing for today. Not a system, not a whole new you, just one move. Think of the one task you've been avoiding, only one. And instead of asking how to force it, ask a gentle question. What's the feeling I'm actually avoiding here? Name it, quietly. Is it dread, boredom, the fear of doing it badly? Just naming it shrinks it a little. Then decide the smallest possible first move, the 2-minute version. The one too small for the feeling to grab. Open the file, read the email, put the folder on the desk. That's the whole assignment. You're not committing to finish. You're just stepping to the edge of a puddle you can finally see is shallow. And if something in this landed, if you're tired of mistaking your dread for laziness, I wrote a short, free guide that lays out the whole gentle system for actually following through. The 2-minute rule, a way of tracking yourself that can't punish you for one bad day. And the one rule that protects all of it. Never miss twice. It's called the forgiving habit, and the link is in the description and pinned in the comments. No cost, no catch. If this is the kind of calm you'd like more of, You're welcome to subscribe and settle in with us. Until next time, be rigorous with your systems and gentle with yourself.